Just realized that like there needs to be more opportunities for people of color.
Nicole Byer isn't just the funny best friend. And Hollywood is starting to see that. The 34-year-old comedian is up for her first Emmy. She currently hosts the Netflix amateur baking series Nailed It. And she's the first African American woman to be nominated in that category. We first met Byer on the commentary MTV series Girl Code, and later fell a little deeper in love with her comedic stylings in Loosely Exactly Nicole, a series based off of her real life. Since then, she's racked up a number of credits, roles in The Good Place, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and soon in Hulu's Bad Hair. We chat. Nicole, when did you first discover comedy? Or maybe comedy discovered you?
I mean, I first discovered I liked making people laugh when I was a kid. My grandmother is from Barbados, so she has a lot of like isms that aren't American. And when I was little, anytime I made her laugh, she would just be like, "Oh, you tickle me." And I liked that phrasing so much. I was like, "Oh, it's so funny that like when you tickle someone, they laugh. So that means I'm making her laugh. I want to keep making her say, "Oh, you tickle me." So that would be like my goal when I saw her. And
Yeah.
then I guess I was just like I always joked around. I was always like I'd rather talk than do work in school. So people always said I was funny, and then when I started performing, I was like, "Oh, like you can make people feel while you're on stage. I want to do that." So in high school is when I was like, I want to be funny for a living. So I went to acting school in New York City. I have a certificate that says I can act. I don't have a degree. And I'll tell you, no one's ever asked to see it in an audition. Um, but I started performing at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. Amy Poehler, Matt Walsh, Ian Roberts, Matt Besser. It's their theater that started in New York. They have a theater out in LA. I started performing there, and that's how I got my manager. That's how I got an agent. That's how I got auditions. I met a ton of like-minded people and collaborated with them. My best friend this year's a maid. I met her there. We did a web series together. We now do a podcast together. So I think I just transitioned like I'm funny into performing comedy into this can be something else.
Yeah, yeah. How did Hollywood receive you? Because I feel like my first memory of seeing you on TV was MTV's Girl Code, and I thought you were absolutely hilarious on that show. But
Thank
what was it
you.
like for you to actually get inside of the industry that you wanted to be a part of?
it just it took a lot of work. Like my very first job I was 30 Rock. I did and I don't want to say like I was in an episode. I was in the tag of an episode. So the episode ends and then when the credits are rolling there's like another scene. So I'm in that scene and I do an impersonation of Monique, and that was my first time on like an actual set. It was my first time with a crew, and it was really cool. Like Tina was very she doesn't remember this. I know she doesn't, but like I remember it because it was my first job. And Beth McCarthy Miller was the director, so it was like cool to see women in charge. And they let me improvise a bunch because they were like, oh, she doesn't have very much to do. Let's let her run. And then the crew was like laughing, and I was like, this is what acting is. And then it was several years before I did another thing like that. But then I got Girl Code, and the response was like very nice. But then people go, is that all you can do? And then you have to figure out how to be like, no, it's not all I can do. I can do a lot of other things. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know how Hollywood has received me. I still don't know. I don't. I don't know. I don't think I answered your question.
But you did, you did. I mean, one thing that I really enjoyed reading about, that's part of your story, is your stance on body positivity. You essentially tell people that they should love the body that they're currently in, regardless of if you want to make changes or not.
Mhm.
How did you arrive there? Was there a moment for you that made you come to that realization for yourself?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I personally don't like the term body positive because I'm like, why is there a whole term that we had to make up for people to like their bodies? Ugh, woof. How truly wild. But I guess it was um I've always worn like very tight things, and I had a manager when I worked at Lame Bryant, who I like to call Lame Giant. But one of my managers was like, "Nicole, you wear such tight clothing," and I was like, "Yeah, I like how it looks." And she's like, "Well, it's not appropriate." And I thought about that, and I was like, "This, I'm a fat woman who works in a fat woman's store. Who am I hiding it for? We're all big." And then I like would always wear like a little cap sleeve. And I was like, why am I wearing a little? Who cares? Like, if there's a little piece of fabric on my fat arm, people will still know it's fat if there's no fabric there. So then I started wearing like tank tops and stuff. And then this was like maybe I moved to LA 7 years ago, so this was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Me and my other fat friend Marcy. Well, I shouldn't call her that. I don't know how she identifies. Some people get real upset when you call them fat, but you're like, oh, do you not? Do you not see it? But I'm gonna call her fat. So my fat friend Marcy and I go to Palm Springs. I said, Marcy, I only brought bikinis because I don't know nobody up here and I don't care. And she was like, me either. And I was like, I'm gonna post pictures and say I'm very fat and I'm very brave. And we laughed really hard about it. And then I did do it, and the world didn't end. Time didn't stop. Nobody came running out of the hotel to be like, you fatty, you must cover up. Everyone thinks a whale has landed in Palm Springs." Like, nobody was mad about it. And I was like, oh, this was fully just like in my head. So, I mean, there's power in being different. There's power in not being the standard. Who wants to look like everybody else? I don't. I would be so sad if I woke up a white lady who looked like everybody. And that's not to say being white is bad. I just love being black so much. I love it. I love the way I look. I love my skin color. So I think it's like you have to embrace the things that make you different. Otherwise, you'll just be so sad chasing looking like everybody else.
Has that been like an obstacle for you in Hollywood at all? Because this is such an industry that it, it can be difficult for people who
Mm-hmm.
don't fit a certain aesthetic to find space inside of this industry. Has that been the case for you?
No. No, I mean, yeah, I go out for a lot of best friend parts. Uh, I don't really like, sometimes I'll go out for the lead. But when I see the things after they're booked, I'm like, yeah, you weren't looking for me. Um, that being said, systemic racism is a real thing. There's always a part to be a nurse. There's always a part to be a maid. There's always a part to be that fat, cute little best friend. So, no, I don't have problems because I fit in a stereotype. If I want to be the lead of something, maybe I have to write that myself.
You have certainly found a lane that is not only working very well for you. You've been nominated for an Emmy, making you the first Black woman reality TV host with Nailed It on Netflix. What does that feel like?
It feels cool. It feels good. People are like, what does it mean to you? I'm like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I believe I will lose to RuPaul. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think what it means to the world is when you're pitching a show, maybe you pitch it with a black female host or an Indian American female host or like a Filipino host or like something other than a straight white dude. And I'm not saying straight white dudes are bad. I'm not saying they should be eradicated from society. I'm just saying just clear some room at the table so other people can get there. And also, like, when white people are like, oh, they went ethnic, that's why I didn't get the job. I'm like, I just need you guys to know that no, there's still white people involved. There's probably all white people behind the scenes and then the one black host. So tell me how they went ethnic other than that one thing. So I think they need to get that out of their heads and just realize that, like, there needs to be more opportunities for people of color. Like, if you've dominated for such a long time, then, like, it's kind of like with the presidency where we're like, we're a transracial society. We had Obama. Bitch, that was one. That was one. We can't be trans any, like, we haven't ascended past nothing. It's
Yeah.
tokenism if you think about it,
Yeah.
because we reverted right back even harder in the opposite direction. So tell me how we've made progress. We haven't. And it's the same thing with television in this industry. The 90s was heavily black. I had so many influences growing up, like, Sister Sister, Moesha, the Parkers, Martin, the Jamie Foxx show, Living Single. We had so much. And then if you think 10, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, not so much. It went very white again. So then you
Yes.
have the industry this year going, oh, we're gonna, have inclusion rioters, and we're gonna really like do our due diligence. Oh, okay. So what's gonna happen 15 years from now? Is the same thing gonna happen? So like change comes from the top. So as soon as you have like, black or brown people of color, executives, that's when change actually happens.
Mm. What will be indicative, of maybe having some consistency where we don't see those ebbs and flows? I know you talked about having someone, with greenlit power, but is there anything else that should be happening that will make you say, okay, now I can feel a little bit more comfortable that things are moving in the right direction?
When writers' rooms have more than just their token, person of color working. Because writers' rooms they're a real systemic issue that people don't really know about. So what happens in a writers' room is you hire your room, you look around, you got an all white room, a couple women, mostly white dudes, and then you go, oh, we need some color. Oh, okay, well we have our diversity hire, which is free to our budget. The network provides the money for them, so you hire them, and then the network pays for them up until they get to a certain level. Once they're past a certain level, you let them go and you hire another one at a lower level. And then that person has a hard time getting a job because upper level rooms get filled up fast and they're not thinking of that person of color. So it's like it's in rooms, if you have more voices, then those people push casting. Like it's not just a casting director. The casting director sends a tape, the room watches it, the showrunner watches it, and then if those are people of color watching it, they can go, oh, well, we haven't seen enough people of color, let's bring in some more. Also, you have to give somebody their first job in order to give them more jobs. You don't get good off the bat. You get, like, if you look at people's first stuff, like look at, like, I don't know, Angelina Jolie's first movie. She wasn't amazing in it. Brad Pitt wasn't amazing in his first movie. You have to give people the opportunities to get good. If you don't hire them, how do they get good? So, take a chance, hire an unknown person of color, and guess what? You hired them at a lower rate. You have room left over in the budget. Get them an acting coach. There's no shame in that. A lot of people have acting coaches. So I think change happens when you actually make an active effort to make change and not say something with your mouth.
Next on Another Act is Laz Alonso.